How to loop through data and display it dynamically on the front end in Angular with the latest method. Links to the resources and source code will be available in the description below. Let's get started. In VS Code, you guys can see that I already set up the Angular app, and I also installed Tailwind CSS just to make the styling a little bit easier today. If you want to learn how to set up an Angular app with Tailwind CSS from scratch, check out the link up top or down below in the description. Now let's navigate into the SRC folder, go to the app and select the app.html. Here you guys can see that I set up a basic grid layout with HTML and Tailwind CSS. And if we view this within the local host, you guys can see that one grid item is displaying. But so you guys can visualize this just a little bit better, what I'm going to do is copy this grid item here that I have, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it down below 2 more times. And now in the local host, you guys can see that we have a 3-column layout and 3 grid items displaying, but everything is hard-coded in here at this point, which is not what we want to do. So back in VS Code, what I'm going to do is remove those grid items that I just pasted and just go ahead and leave 1 for now. And what we need to do next is we need to create an array to actually store all of our data that we want to render onto the front end dynamically. So to do that, we need to navigate to the app.ts file, and at the bottom where the class is located, what we want to do is go below this protected title, and we want to create an array called hotels. Within this array, we're going to start off by creating an object. So for each grid item that we want to display, we are going to have one distinct and unique object. So here what we need to do is start off with an ID key, and the value for this one is going to be 1. And for each object that we have going forward, we want to make sure that the ID is a unique value. And now to save some time, I'm going to paste in the rest of my key value pairs. First, we're going to have the name, and the value is going to be a string, the location with a string value, price per night with an integer value, and the image URL as a string value. And here for the image, we're getting specifically the Maldives.jpg. And since Angular knows that we want to pull our images from the public folder, all we have to do is put a slash here, and it will automatically go into the public folder and get our image. So this is going to be all of the information that we need to have within our first object, and this is going to be what we are going to render into our first grid element in a moment. But we also want to have 2 more grid elements. So what I'm going to do just to save some time is I'm going to go ahead and paste those in. But keep in mind, after this first object, make sure you include a comma here. So after that, I'll paste in the second and third object with all of the information. And again, make sure that the ID for each object is a unique value here. So now that we have our hotels array set up with all of the information that we need, that's all we need to do here in the app.ts file. What we need to do next is go back to the app.html, and before I start creating this loop, I want to highlight some important stuff. If you're used to using a version of Angular before version 17, the best way to loop through data was going to be with the ngFor, but from version 17 and newer, we now have a new way of looping through data using the @for loop. So to set this up, what we want to do is go right after our grid, and we want to specify @for parentheses, and then we're going to say hotel of hotels. So what we're doing here is we're pulling the array, and then we're getting each individual object here for each iteration of the loop. And after this, we also need to track a unique value for each iteration. So we need to specify track, and then here we're going to say hotel.id. So this line right here is why we want to make sure we set up a unique ID value for each object, because if the ID here is not unique, the loop will not work correctly. After this, we'll set up our double curly braces, and then all we need to do is grab our grid element here, and I will paste that within the for loop. And then if you guys are used to using JavaScript or something similar, notice how this looks pretty similar to a loop in JavaScript. So this is a lot easier and a lot quicker to work with than the old ngFor was. And now that we're looping through each one of our 3 objects in our hotels array, if we look at our localhost, you guys will see that 3 grid items are successfully displaying here, but everything is duplicated because over here in VS Code, we're still hard coding everything inside of our loop into the HTML. So to fix this, we're going to start off with the image. The src needs to be wrapped in square brackets here. So I'll wrap it like so. And then instead of cozumel.jpg, what we want to do is get our hotel.image URL. And after that, if we go look at our local host, you guys will see that the images are dynamically displaying for each one. Now all we need to do is just update this information down below. So back in VS Code, what we want to do is change the alternative text here from image, and we'll create 2 sets of curly braces, and we'll say hotel.name. And then from here, we can just copy this, paste it in for the hotel.name, paste it in for the hotel location, change this from name to location, and then we'll replace the 189 here, and this is going to be hotel.price per night. And then we need to do it one more time for the rating. Specify hotel.rating. So now that we have this set up in our app.html, if we go back into our local host, you guys can see that all of the information from our array is being displayed on our front end dynamically for each grid item. And at this point, you guys can add as many objects as you want, and everything will display dynamically on the front end. And everything will display dynamically here on the front end. If you guys run into any problems or have any questions, please reach out to me directly through the comments of this video. If not, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in another one.